wheat and the weeds be allowed to grow together until harvest time. Pope Francis said this is a realistic approach that helps us to look at history, avoiding both the stellar optimism and the poisonous pessimism. Christians recognize this interplay not just in the world at large, but also in their own lives, he continued, realizing that evil comes also from within us. The parable poses the question of what should be done with this situation, and the Pope noted how the servants want to pull up the weeds.
Catholic Women's Organization in Malawi has celebrated 50 years of its existence in the church at an event which took place on Saturday at Sivo Stadium in Lilongwe. CWO National Chairperson Doreen Ziwa thanked all women for their participation in church activities, saying it is vital in uplifting different sectors of the church. On his part, Archbishop Desmond Tambara, President of the Episcopal Conference of Malawi, expressed the bishop's commitment to continue supporting women in their respective activities. Bernard Mwanza reports.
In 1972, the Episcopal Conference of Malawi wrote a pastoral letter titled "You Also Go and Work in My Vineyard," in which the bishops reiterated the need for the Catholic lay faithful to evangelize. In a bid to respond to the call, a few women then organized themselves and came together to so search their role as women in the family, church, and the nation, which marked the beginning of Catholic Women's Organization, CWO, in Malawi, led by Father Alan Jamgwira, now Bishop Emeritus of Zomba Diocese at St. Pius Parish in the Archdiocese of Blantyre. Marking the climax of the Golden Jubilee celebration, thousands of CWO members, clad in regalia exclusively for the day, filled Sivo Stadium in Lilongwe on Saturday. In her remarks at the end of the Holy Eucharistic celebration, CWO National Chairperson Doreen Zimba said the organization has been a greatest pillar in the church as women participate in most activities that promote the welfare of the church compared to how men participate. His Lordship Martin Anuel Mtumbuka, Bishop Chairman for Pastoral Commission at the Episcopal Conference of Malawi, challenged the women to emulate the women of the Bible who questioned one another as to who would remove the stone at the tomb of Jesus.
We talked a lot about Mary Maria Magdalena. Maria Magdalena pamene kumanda amadandaula chinthu chimodzi ndani akatichosere chimwala. I feel the country of Malawi is weighed under a big stone of poverty. We can't continue like this. But this time, we want to involve you, the women.
On his part, Archbishop George Desmond Tambara said the Bishops' Conference is working to produce a handbook guide on the spirituality of the Catholic Men Organization, CMO, and the Catholic Women Organization, CWO, to guide the operations of the two lay groups. Professor Ngei Kanyongolo, who was the guest of honor at the celebration, highlighted the need for women empowerment within and outside the church for the establishment of a generation that is able to combat poverty and spur development. The Catholic Women's Organization of Mozambique and Tanzania also graced the celebration, led by Evelyn Mtenga, who is World Union of Catholic Organization Africa Region President. This is Bernard Mwanza for Luntha News in Lilongwe.
Renowned governance expert Victor Jibofia has expressed concern with unwavering ignorance of austerity measures by government, noting that they are draining public purse as well as exerting pressure on low forex reserves. The development comes as President Lazarus Chakwera is this week expected to join other heads of state at the Africa Human Capital Heads of State Summit to take place at the Julius Nyerere Conference Center in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. According to Jibofia, the trip comes at a time the country is grappling with several challenges, including fuel shortages that have forced motorists to sleep on queues at service stations. Tandiwe Mzumara with the details.
The Africa Human Capital Heads of State Summit comes in response to engagements with government focal points on the need to draw attention to the role of human capital in economic growth and elevate the discussion on the importance of investing in people. The summit is expected to foster technical deliberation, share the latest knowledge on human capital, and conclude with concrete commitments and next steps from the participating heads of state from the continent. According to Minister of Foreign Affairs spokesperson John Kalai, Chakwera will address the summit to promote Malawi's interests in health, labor, youth empowerment, education, and early child development for the achievement of Agenda 2063 of the African Union, with hopes that this will potentially unlock financing for Malawi in these areas.
His Excellency the President is ensuring that Malawi's programs in human capital development are aligned to the African Union initiatives in order to ensure that the resources that are available at the continental level are also able to cascade down to Malawi and support the various sectors that Malawi is also involved in trying to promote human capital development in the country.
Kalai could not give the exact number of those traveling, saying he would only be able to provide such information after consolidating with the lists from various offices and institutions, both private and public. However, reports have it that a cross-section of Malawian delegates that includes key ministers and technocrats are already in Tanzania. Commenting on the issue, governance expert Victor Shibofya notes that despite the frequent foreign trips being made, there hasn't been much to show for them in as far as Malawians benefiting is concerned. He has advised the president to consider utilizing online communication platforms to undertake high-level online conferences and meetings, as he sometimes has done.
There are so many trips that the president has made, and he has said that these trips are going to benefit Malawians. But yet today, Malawians are struggling. 91% of the people are unemployed. The country is ranked the third from the poorest in the world. 70% poverty level in Malawi. Illiteracy levels are high. And yet, these trips, if you look at the amount of money that is spent, it's humongous.
Records show that between September 2020 and December 2022, Chakwera made about 27 international trips to 17 countries in Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and the United States of America, accumulating into 127 days abroad. In May 2022, the president introduced a raft of measures to contain the economic decline, and Rule 1 restricts foreign trips of public officers, including himself. For Luntha News, this is Tandiwe Mzumara.
The government says it needs about 30 billion kwacha to successfully allocate 5,000 hectares of land for residential and commercial use, which has been assessed by Ministry of Lands. Lands Minister Deus Kumba was speaking in Parliament on Thursday during his ministerial statement on access to land for urban development. Chidiva South legislator Welani Chirenga queried the minister on Kanengo Northgate Housing Estate project, which the minister said in response that the matter is in court. Our reporter Robert Edward reports.
Presenting the statement at the beginning of the second meeting of the 50th session of Parliament on Monday, Lands Minister Deus Gumba told the August House that land in Lilongwe, Cholo and Dunduzo in the north has been assessed, and at least 5,000 plots have been identified for sale to Malawians under the Malawi Investment and Trade Center, as well as city councils, among others. The land in Lilongwe include area 26, 27, 54, 55, and 56, while in Zuzu it is Dunduzo and Nantibwiri in Cholo, where 194 hectares, having 1,556 plots, have been demarcated. Speaking in an interview, Lands Minister Deus Gumba said the allocation of land to city councils or MITC awaits completion of compensation payment, which is about 30 billion kwacha.
You see the issue, the current law states clearly that we cannot just grab land from people who are perhaps for instance, are actually doing some farming activities or are settled there. When it comes to that, we're supposed to pay compensation. So indeed, if you add up the figure should be close to 30 billion for the government to pay out in terms of compensation so that we can create these plots. Suffice to say that as government, we're moving. We cannot afford to have all this money at the same time, but we're moving in trenches, and this should be more or less like a revolving fund. Once we get started, we should be able to move in the right direction.
Different members of parliament, including Chitipa South's Weran Chirenga, took turns to ask the minister on the matter, but Chirenga was interested on the stalled Kanengo North Gate housing estate project, which according to Gumba, the matter is still in court. In Area 54, about 733 hectares have been earmarked, and the compensation is about 18 billion kwaja, where 633 plots have been demarcated, while in Area 37, 70 hectares have been earmarked, with 1.2 billion needed for compensation, and 417 hectares of land, which requires 9 billion kwaja for compensation. For Luntha, this is Robert Edward.
Thousands of qualified primary school teachers were this afternoon at Ncheu Secondary School for walk-in interviews where they were competing for 60 positions. Reports indicate that there were over 3,000 candidates for the interviews, from which the council wants to employ 60 new teachers. Teachers attending the interviews were those under EPT 13, 14 and 15. Government, through the Ministry of Education, want to recruit 2,200 teachers, and the councils are the ones conducting the recruitment. Speaking to local media, one of the teachers, Yanko Matias, said the number of people attending the interview in Cheu would have been reduced if all councils across the country conducted interviews on the same day. You are still watching news on Luntha television and on our various social media platforms. Do stick around as we'll be back shortly after this break.
Personal growth to business solutions, there is no limit to what you can imagine. It's time to reimagine banking. Centenary Bank, our bank.
You're welcome back. Now let's have a look at our top stories once more before we proceed. Pope Francis celebrates World Day for Grandparents and the Elderly. Chakwera leaves for Tanzania on Tuesday. Thousands of teachers show up for walk-in interviews in Cheu. And in news from elsewhere, 8 people died after fuel truck explosion in southwest Nigeria. Moving on, the Malawi Economic Justice Network says the country's public debt has reached a worrisome point that the country could be denied further borrowing due to unsustainability. Managing Executive Director Bertha Piri made the remarks during a press conference earlier today in Lilongwe, ahead of the National African Conference on Data and Development Malawi, slated for Tuesday and Wednesday in Lilongwe. Piri said they want to utilize the conference to engage all relevant stakeholders to bring them to account on matters relating to public dirt management. Bernard Mwanza reports.
The conference is part of the national convening feeding into the forthcoming African Conference on Dirt and Development, scheduled to take place in Dakar, Senegal from 30th August to the 1st of September 2023. According to Managing Executive Director Bertha Piri, the conference seeks to provide a platform for honest dialogue for the country to take its destiny into its own hands by consulting against all odds what can best work for Malawi if it is to attain the Malawi 2063 developmental aspiration with a performing economy free from the burden of debt. She said while debt is not bad, it is important for countries like Malawi to be strict on how they utilize the resources borrowed, which mostly should be investment, not consumption like how Malawi does.
In the past or the last year's financial statement, the national budget, the minister actually communicated to say the second allocation to the sectors was actually going to service the debt in interest, not even the principal. So the debt situation in Malawi, not only Malawi like I indicated, countries are grappling with the same, is affecting the development agenda. We are at the helm of paying back the loans at the expense of social service provision.
Currently, Malawi's public debt is hovering around $7.9 billion, which is equivalent to over 8 trillion Malawi kwacha, and the country is struggling to service its debt, let alone allocating budgetary resources towards development.
We have been actually negotiating for extended credit facility windows, which for some time we are not being given a critical space to continue borrowing. Obviously, we will reach at a scenario whereby we will not be borrowed anymore by the lenders because our debt would have been labeled to be unsustainable and bad one.
The conference, which will be convened under the theme Shaping Our Development Destiny, will draw participants from a cross-section of the Malawi society that include government officials, especially Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, the Debt and Aid Division, Reserve Bank of Malawi, the National Planning Commission, NPC, the private sector, academia, parliament, youth representatives, cross-border traders, the faith community, among others. Piri further stressed that the conference will engage in policy dialogue and information and knowledge sharing on how to deal with Malawi's development finance challenges amid multiple crises facing the country. The IMF's Africa Regional Economic Outlook 2023 shows that public debt and inflation are at levels not seen in decades, with double-digit inflation present in about half of the countries, eroding household purchasing power and striking are the most vulnerable. This is Bernard Manza for Luntha News in Lilongwe.
A memorandum of understanding between Malawi Electoral Commission and National Registration Bureau has cemented the Bureau's responsibility to make sure that those eligible to vote in the 2025 general elections are in the National Social Registrar. The MOU has since been signed in Lilongwe on Monday, formalizing the agreements between the two institutions. Speaking during the signing ceremony, MEC chairperson Dr. Jifundo Gajari said voter registration is an important step in a credible election, while Homeland Security Minister Kenneth Zikarengoma says all needed resources will be made available to NRB for efficient registration exercise. Robert Edward reports.
Under the new electoral laws, national identity cards will be the primary document for one to be registered voter in the 16th September 2025 general election. On Monday, Malawi Electoral Commission MEC and National Registration Bureau NRB sealed an understanding for NRB to register and issue a card to citizens from 16 years and above who who will be 18 and above in 2025, as the cards produced by the Bureau will be the only proof for voter registration. According to MEG chairperson Justice Dr. Chifundo Kachare, the MOU is the instrument of reference for both parties.
So as the Electoral Commission, we are planning ahead to ensure that when we are launching our registration process next year, we should be able to have the assurance that all the people in the targeted areas have the relevant registration documentation insofar as the national IDs are concerned, so that if they choose to register as voters, they have that opportunity.
Homeland Security Minister Ken Zikari-Ngoma says about $4 million have been set aside to procure additional printers for the Bureau's effective delivery of its mandate.
The government has given us over $4 million to buy supplies and everything else that we need in preparation for 2025 general elections. So we are ready and things are happening.
The MOU succeeds another MOU which was signed in 2017 between the two institutions. Currently, Ngoma has since disclosed that the ministry will soon make a pronouncement on how it has formalized presidential pronouncement on expired national IDs, as some quarters, including leader of opposition Ngondwa Nanghuma, asked the government to remove fees for renewal of national IDs, including police reports, which makes it difficult for citizens to renew the card when lost, damaged, or expired. For Luntha, this is Robert Edward.
Now in news from elsewhere. At least 8 people have been killed after a fuel truck exploded in southwestern Nigeria as residents were trying to siphon petrol out of it, police said. The truck was involved in an accident on Sunday night in a neighborhood of Ondo State, which caused it to veer off the road and tumble on its side. Fuel truck accidents are common in Nigeria, where petroleum products are often carried across the country by roads as rail infrastructure is mostly outdated or inadequate. We have the details.
Petrol prices have also risen from 189 naira, which is 0.24 United States dollars, to 617 naira, which is 0.78 United States dollars per liter, the highest in the history of Africa's largest oil producer, since Nigerian President Bola Tinubu scrapped a popular but costly fuel subsidy at his inauguration on May 29. That has triggered economic woes in the country, especially for motorists, households and small businesses that use petrol generators for power. It also angered labor unions, which are now demanding an increase in the minimum monthly wage from 30,000 naira, which is 37.69 United States dollars. In June, average daily petrol consumption fell to 48.43 million liters, 13 million gallons, down from a daily average of 66.9 million liters in January through May before the subsidy was removed, according to figures from the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA.
That item also concludes our today's news bulletin. But before we go, a reminder of our top stories. Pope Francis celebrates World Day for Grandparents and the Elderly. Chakwera leaves for Tanzania on Tuesday. Thousands of teachers show up for walk-in interviews in Cheu. And in news from elsewhere, 8 people died after fuel truck explosion in southwest Nigeria. My name is Helbert Katanda. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye for now.